At my son's soccer tournament, his cleats were destroyed. My sister sneered, he needed a humility lesson. My parents laughed, blamed him for drama. The next morning, my dad showed up, demanding I pay his medical bills, until the investigation exposed everything they'd done. Hey, Reddit! My family's always acted like my son was just the extra kid in the background, while my sister's twins were the stars of the universe. I ignored it for years, kept my head down, raised my kid, built my own life, but apparently they weren't done dragging us into their chaos. Before I get into the mess they just caused, let me start from the beginning. My name's Nikolai. I'm 35, I fix and maintain equipment for a warehouse company. I'm married to Juliet, and I'm dad to Jasper, 9 years old, obsessed with youth soccer, the kind of kid who practices in the yard until the sun drops and the ball turns into a shadow. My family has always had a main character, and for most of my life, it wasn't me. Growing up, Becky didn't just get attention, she got a spotlight. If she walked into a room, everything tilted toward her like gravity changed. If I brought home a good grade, it was a quiet nod. If Becky brought home anything, an award, a story, a complaint, my parents, Albert and Catherine, reacted like the world had paused to hear it. And it wasn't always loud favoritism either. Sometimes it was subtle, like being left out of family photos because you were off to the side anyway. Sometimes it was money that somehow never covered my school trips, but always appeared for Becky's important opportunities. Sometimes it was the way my parents spoke about her, like she was an investment they couldn't afford to lose. I learned early that the easiest way to survive was to expect nothing and ask for less. Keep my head down, build my own life. Don't beg for a seat at a table where they enjoyed not setting one for me. Then Becky had her twins, Evan and Leo, and the whole family found a new religion. Suddenly it wasn't just Becky who needed the spotlight. It was Becky's boys. The family talked about them like they were born with trophies in their hands. Every holiday became a highlight reel. Every gathering turned into a pitch meeting about their potential. My parents acted like the twins weren't just grandkids. They were a legacy. Jasper became the extra kid in the background. Not because he was worse. Not because he was less lovable. Not because he didn't work hard. He just wasn't theirs in the way the twins were theirs. He was my kid, and in their minds, that meant he belonged in the second row, clapping politely for the stars of the universe. And the soccer fields turned that dynamic into a public sport. Every season, every tournament, every practice, same pattern. Becky arrived loud. Philip filmed like he was documenting a documentary. My parents complained like the event was failing them personally. And Jasper could score, assist, defend his heart out. Albert and Catherine only lit up when one of the twins touched the ball. Becky coached from the sideline like she'd invented the sport. Philip narrated like every breath his sons took was elite athletic genius. Evan and Leo played like they expected applause for showing up. Last season, Becky actually took Jasper's soccer ball out of his hands and tossed it into her trunk. Not because it was in the way, not because it was unsafe, because she wanted to. She said, smiling, "He doesn't need a real one until he's better." People laughed like it was a cute joke. I didn't laugh. When I confronted her, she acted like I was unstable for not finding it funny. Like I was ruining the mood by caring about my own kid. And my parents, of course, sided with her. They always did. They always had. So I stopped giving them emotional access. I stopped expecting fairness. I stopped hoping they'd suddenly wake up and realize Jasper was a child, not a prop in Becky's competition. Juliet and I built our own routine instead. 2 practices a week, sometimes 3 when the coach pushed conditioning. Cleats wearing down fast. Jerseys needing to be washed the same night because tournaments stacked up. Fees, schedules, field maps, early mornings cold enough to bite your lungs. Juliet handled the paperwork and volunteering, snack lists, canopy setup, keeping the team organized when parents drifted off. I handled gear, driving, hauling the heavy stuff, fixing what breaks, and making sure Jasper had what he needed because nobody else was going to do it for him. That was our life. Quiet work, real effort. No spotlight, no audience, just showing up for our kid. And then this tournament came up, the one that actually mattered. This wasn't a casual one-game Saturday. It was a weekend tournament. Multiple days, multiple brackets, and a committee that handled disputes because they'd had incidents before. The complex had staff, security, and fixed cameras along the walkways and bench areas for liability. A recruiter from an advanced travel program was supposed to be watching games. Coach had hinted they'd seen footage already and wanted an in-person look. I didn't tell the family. I didn't tell anyone except Juliet, because Becky didn't need another reason to turn Jasper into her opponent. I told myself it would be like the other Saturdays. Show up, tune them out, focus on Jasper. I told myself I could keep the day from going sideways if I just stayed calm and did what I always did. That was the mistake. Because this time, they weren't satisfied with treating Jasper like background noise. This time, somebody decided to change the game. Jasper woke up jittery, bouncing his knee while he laced the clean pair of socks Juliet set out for him. "Do you think Coach will put me at striker?" he asked for the third time that morning. "Or midfield?" "I practiced both." "Drink," Juliet said, handing him his bottle. "Hydrate first, positions later." I double-checked the cooler, making sure the ice packs were actually cold and the fruit hadn't rolled under the milk. Jasper stuffed his hoodie into his bag, zipped it fast, and followed us out to the car. When we pulled into the tournament lot, the place already looked overloaded. Cars everywhere, people weaving between them, kids sprinting ahead of their parents. Tents were scattered across the field, half folded or half collapsing in the wind. Teams were warming up aggressively, some running full-field sprints at 7 in the morning. Ref whistles cut through the noise nonstop. We barely stepped out of the car before Becky showed up, waving her arms like she owned the event. She wore team merch, but not for Jasper's team. Something from a club 3 towns over. Bright colors, wrong logo. "I thought I'd support a real club today," she said, brushing past us. Philip stood behind her, phone out, giving loud commentary on another team's warm-ups. "Terrible form. No discipline. Our boys would eat them alive." Evan and Leo kicked a stray ball at a random tent, then chased it, nearly tripping over a toddler. They laughed and didn't apologize. Becky clapped like someone had just scored a World Cup goal. Albert and Catherine got out of their SUV complaining instantly. We hadn't even reached our team tent. As we walked, something felt off. I lifted Jasper's gear bag to move it from the cart, and it felt lighter. I told myself it was nothing, until I looked up and saw Philip already posted near the bags, phone up, eyes scanning like he was counting opportunities. Juliet noticed the zipper slightly open. She reached over and closed it tight. "Thought you zipped it," she said quietly to Jasper. "I did," he answered. Philip didn't just drift past once. He kept looping the gear area from the moment families started dropping bags, pretending to film the field, but really tracking where everyone set their stuff, like he was waiting for a gap. The coach blew a whistle and waved the team over. "Warm-ups! Let's go!" Jasper jogged toward the group, shaking out his arms the way he always did when he was nervous. Evan and Leo immediately shoved ahead of him to get to the front of the line for drills. Leo bumped Jasper with his shoulder, pretending it was accidental. Jasper stepped aside without arguing. "They should be the starting players today," Becky said loudly. "They've got the real talent." A couple parents turned and stared at her. She smiled like she enjoyed the attention. The warm-up looked chaotic. Kids passing the ball, doing ladder work, stretching. Evan kicked the ball too hard, nearly hitting another team's coach. Leo tried sliding into a cone drill like it was a match moment. Philip yelled assessments the whole time, things like, "That foot placement is sloppy," and "Boys, show them how elite players move." Jasper warmed up in his trainers. He always saved his cleats for right before kickoff, so he wouldn't chew them up on wet grass. Juliet kept an eye on Jasper, making sure he stayed focused. He seemed fine, but I noticed him checking his bag spot once or twice, like he sensed something too. "Stay close," Juliet said to me quietly. "I don't like how they're hovering." I nodded and moved toward the gear area. Coach's whistle blasted again. "Line up. Bring it in." Parents shifted, folding chairs squeaked, and the players ran toward the sideline to hear final instructions. Jasper's cheeks were flushed from warm-ups, but he looked excited. Time for the lineup check. I reached down to grab Jasper's bag so I could move it closer to the bench. The zipper I'd watched Juliet pull shut earlier was open again. Something felt wrong instantly. I opened the flap. Then I froze. His cleats were sliced across the sole, a clean cut running almost halfway through. One lace was cut completely, hanging loose like it had been snipped on purpose. His backup cleats weren't in the bag at all. That was why it felt lighter earlier, like my hands had noticed what my brain hadn't caught yet. They were always there. Juliet made sure of it every single game. His shin guards were bent, one pushed inward like someone sat on it. Juliet saw my face and stepped over fast. "What is it?" I tilted the bag so she could see. She sucked in a quick breath. "These were fine this morning." Coach walked over, already irritated by the chaos of the tournament. "What's going on?" I held up the cleats. The cut was obvious. He exhaled sharply. "You've got to be kidding me. He shouldn't start like that. That's unsafe." Parents nearby offered help, but the sizes were all wrong. Mostly older kids' cleats, way too big. One mom handed over a pair that would have slid off Jasper's feet with every step. Another dad tried to squeeze his son's size into Jasper's, but it wasn't even close. Juliet grabbed tape from the first aid kit and tried wrapping the damaged sole. "Hold it still," she told Jasper, crouched on the grass with him. "It won't hold," Coach said, shaking his head. I sprinted toward the vendor tents, dodging kids and parents. A table full of soccer gear sat near the concession area. I searched through bins, but they didn't have Jasper's size. Too big, too small, wrong type, nothing that matched what he needed. The vendor apologized, but that didn't help. When I ran back, Juliet was still on the ground with Jasper's foot in her hands, trying another layer of tape. Coach hovered with his arms crossed. Meanwhile, Becky stood off to the side sipping her drink, one foot planted like she was posing. She wasn't even pretending not to watch us. Philip filmed discreetly, pretending he was getting crowd footage, but the camera lens kept angling toward Jasper. Evan and Leo whispered to each other, stifling laughs. One glanced directly at the torn cleats and grinned. Albert wandered by and shrugged. "Cleats don't last forever, Nikolai." Catherine added, "Kids should learn to adapt. Builds character." Jasper swallowed hard, but didn't say anything. His eyes stayed on the taped shoe like he was trying to will it to work. Then another problem hit. A ref approached with a clipboard. "You, Nikolai?" "Yes." He lowered his voice a notch. "Just so you know, we got a sportsmanship report from last weekend's scrimmage. Something about a trip. I wasn't there, so I can't verify it, but the tournament logs it." "There was no incident," I said. "He didn't trip anyone." Juliet stepped in. "If someone has footage, we'd love to see it." The ref nodded once, not unkind. "That's the thing. Nobody sent footage, just a report. So today we're flagging his number for observation. It doesn't mean he's in trouble. It means if something happens again, we're watching closely, and the next call won't get the benefit of the doubt." Jasper heard it anyway. His shoulders tightened, like he'd just been handed a weight he didn't ask for. "You can start the match," Coach told him. "But with your number flagged, you don't get any benefit of the doubt. One reckless moment, and it's a card. Understand?" "Yes, Coach," he said quietly. Coach's eyes flicked to the clock, then back to Jasper. "If he can't plant, he comes off immediately," he said. "First slip, first sign of pain, he's out. No hero stuff." Warm-ups ended. The game whistle blew. Jasper stepped onto the field, wearing cleats held together by tape and hope. The grass was still damp from the morning, making every movement risky. From kickoff, it was obvious the cleats were a problem. Jasper slipped during his first sprint, his foot sliding sideways. He caught himself, but barely. Becky cheered like it was part of the entertainment. "There it is!" she shouted. "Too much pressure for him." Philip spoke loudly behind us. "Told them Jasper wasn't ready. Now everyone sees it." Jasper tried again, pushing hard toward the midfield. The tape strained. With every pivot, his foot wobbled. He adjusted, kept moving, refused to sit out. He got one good pass off before losing footing again and hitting the ground. Coach yelled instructions. Juliet clenched the edge of her seat. Parents whispered. Evan and Leo smirked from the sideline. Jasper didn't give up. He kept trying, running slower but staying focused. The field conditions didn't help. Players slid, bumped each other, scrambled for control. Jasper held his position as best he could. Then, minutes before halftime, he pushed for a defensive stop, planted his foot, and the taped cleat tore again. His ankle twisted, and he stumbled forward, catching himself with his hands. He limped off the field, jaw tight, eyes shining but not crying. Coach guided him to the sideline. I rushed over. Juliet knelt beside him. "It's okay," he said, breathing hard. "I just slipped." But the game wasn't the problem anymore. I held the ruined cleats in my hand, sliced, cut, destroyed, and finally accepted what this meant. Someone had done this on purpose. The game ended with Jasper sitting out the last few minutes, foot wrapped, taped cleats beside him. As soon as the final whistle blew, Coach walked straight over. "What happened to his gear?" he asked, eyeing the ripped sole and the bent shin guards. "No idea," I said. "It wasn't like this morning." Coach shook his head. "That kind of damage doesn't happen from play. Somebody messed with it." A couple of nearby parents glanced over. One mom said, "That's awful. Who would do that?" Another father offered Jasper his kid's old cleats for next practice, trying to be helpful. People looked uneasy, and the whole scene felt wrong. We packed up slowly. Juliet guided Jasper toward the parking lot, keeping a hand on his shoulder. I grabbed the cooler and chairs, but my eyes kept drifting toward Becky's tent. I made it 10 steps before I turned and walked toward her. Becky saw me coming and immediately crossed her arms. "What's your problem now?" "You know exactly what happened to Jasper's cleats," I said. "Stop pretending," she scoffed. "Don't start." Maybe teach him to take care of his things. Philip stood behind her, grinning like he was waiting for a show. He didn't say anything, just watched with that smug expression he always had when he thought he was winning. Albert stepped forward, shaking his head. Jasper probably sabotaged them himself. Kids do things for sympathy. Yeah, Catherine added. Players should be tougher. A ripped shoe shouldn't ruin a whole game. I stared at them. The shoe was sliced. That doesn't happen on accident. Evan walked up, bouncing a ball. He was bragging about scouts anyway. Leo chimed in. Yeah, he said he was going to get picked and we weren't. Jasper had never said anything like that, and they all knew it. Juliet glanced back at us, eyes narrowed, but she kept moving Jasper toward the car. I stepped closer to Becky. You or someone in your family did this. Don't lie. Philip suddenly stepped right into my space, chest puffed out like he was being cornered. Back up, he said, loud enough for people to hear. Don't threaten my wife. I didn't threaten anyone, I said. He leaned closer, acting like one more inch would qualify for self-defense. He wanted witnesses. He wanted cameras. And Becky was more than happy to play along. 2 tournament security staff walked over fast, hands already near their radios. What's going on? One asked. Becky launched in immediately. He's unstable. He's harassing us. Look at him. I'm calm, I said. I'm asking why my son's gear was cut. Philip lifted his phone higher, filming. He threatened my wife, he said, loud enough for people to hear. I did not, I said. The security guy's expression changed, not because he believed Philip, but because the word threatened flips a switch in these environments. Sir, he said, when there's an allegation like that, our policy is separation. Right now. He kept his voice measured. This place runs like an airport on tournament weekends. If we don't separate people immediately, it spreads field to field. We document it, escalate it to the director, and keep the rest of the weekend from turning into a bigger incident. He held up a hand toward Philip, too. You, back up and stop recording people's faces. Then he looked at me again. You can stay calm and still have to leave for now. It's not a punishment. It's preventing this from escalating. I am calm, I said. Then step away from them, he replied. Behind me, Juliet was now pulling Jasper toward the car. Come on, she told him, voice steady. We're leaving. Becky wasn't done. She raised her voice again so everyone could hear. My twins lost their chance to be seen today because of your family's drama. Albert pointed a finger at me. You owe us an apology, Catherine called after Jasper. You embarrassed everyone today. Juliet's jaw tightened, but she didn't look back. I didn't move toward anyone, not even a step, but Philip kept acting like I was one breath from swinging. 2 more staff members walked up, trying to keep the peace. One said, Sir, we're escorting you off the grounds for the moment. You can contact the tournament director to file a report. I exhaled through my nose. Fine. I walked toward the lot, one security worker beside me and another slightly behind, just in case Philip decided to add extra drama. Becky kept shouting across the parking lot about how unfair everything was. Albert ranted about gratitude. Catherine yelled advice Jasper didn't ask for. I didn't respond. None of it mattered anymore. Juliet already had Jasper in the back seat. She met my eyes through the window. Tight, controlled, done. I climbed in and shut the door. As we pulled away, Jasper sat silently, staring at the ruined cleats on his lap. The cut across the sole looked even worse in the sunlight. He didn't say a word the entire drive home. The morning after the tournament, the house felt heavier than usual. Nothing dramatic, just the weight of everything from the day before still hanging around. I drove Jasper to school, watching him limp slightly as he stepped out of the car with his backpack. He carried the ruined cleats too, like he couldn't let them out of his sight. He didn't talk much, just asked, "Pick me up early if my ankle gets weird?" I told him I would. When I got home, Juliet was at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone with a blank expression. She was going through our group chats, the big family ones with nonstop spam, the smaller ones about holidays. The cousins chat Becky always flooded with photos of Evan and Leo. One by one, Juliet removed every single family member. No announcement, no explanation, just a clean cut. I'm not dealing with any of them today, she said, sliding her phone aside. She barely finished speaking before someone pounded on the door. 3 fast, impatient hits. I already knew the rhythm. I opened the door to Albert, standing there with his coat half-zipped and papers in his hand. He looked annoyed, not sick or upset, just inconvenienced. We need to talk, he said, pushing past me into the entryway without waiting. Juliet leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Albert sighed loudly and clutched his chest in a dramatic gesture. My heart isn't doing well. The doctors say I need more tests. I have bills. Expensive ones. And I need you to cover them. I blinked. Why me? Becky can't help, he snapped. She has the twins. Their training costs a fortune. And Philip is between jobs. Again, it falls on you. Juliet stepped forward. You came here asking for money the morning after our son was sabotaged? Albert waved a dismissive hand. That wasn't sabotage. You're overreacting. Kids break things all the time. I held up one of the cleats. This was cut with something sharp, on purpose. Then maybe Jasper shouldn't leave his things lying around, Albert said. You have to teach kids responsibility. Let this be a lesson. I stared at him. A lesson? His gear was destroyed. Albert's temper snapped. You owe this family. We put years into supporting the twins, guiding them, raising them to represent the family name. And what have you done? Thrown all that off balance by shoving Jasper into the spotlight. Juliet scoffed. Are you listening to yourself? Albert continued like he hadn't heard her. We invested in the twins. Training camps, equipment, travel. You've benefited from that. Don't pretend you haven't. How have we benefited? I asked. You've been riding the family name, Albert insisted. People assume your boy is talented because he's related to the twins. Juliet almost laughed. You mean the same twins who shoved ahead of Jasper, bragged all morning, and stood there laughing when his cleats were sliced. Albert ignored her. And those cleats were old anyway. You should be grateful they helped teach Jasper some humility. Competition builds character. You're insane, Juliet said, stepping closer. Before I could add anything else, my phone started buzzing. Multiple times. Over and over. I checked it. Catherine calling, her contact photo shaking with each vibration. A new voice note from Becky, the preview already showing several seconds of yelling. Philip texting threats, claiming they were considering legal action for defamation because I kept accusing their kids. Juliet took one look at my screen and shook her head. They're getting worse. Albert jabbed a finger toward me. This is happening because you refuse to support the family. If you don't step up, everything falls apart. I'm not paying your medical bills, I repeated. Albert's face twisted. Then everything we've built goes to the twins. They need support right now. They have more potential than Jasper ever will. Juliet's posture changed instantly. Say that again. Albert didn't even hesitate. The twins need the funds. Jasper doesn't need sports. It's a waste of time for him. So if you won't help me, I'll pull money from the family account, the one we set aside years ago. I didn't move at first because I needed to process what I just heard. What family account? Albert shrugged like it was obvious. The grandkids' savings account, he said. The one your mother and I opened years ago. It's in my name, I manage it, but it was supposed to be for all the grandkids. He looked at me like I was slow. Becky needs it more than you do. You don't get to decide that, I said. It was always meant for the twins, he argued. You know that. Juliet stepped in front of him. We never agreed to that. If any money was set aside, it was for all grandkids, including Jasper. Albert shook his head. No, he doesn't need it. He absolutely does, Juliet said, voice sharp. And you're not touching it. Albert raised his voice. Watch me. I took a step closer. If you take a cent from that account without our permission, I'll handle it legally. Albert laughed under his breath, like the idea amused him. You think you can threaten me? Juliet pointed toward the door. Leave. Now. Albert stood his ground for a moment, breathing hard like he was deciding whether to yell more. When neither of us gave him anything to work with, he finally walked toward the door. I opened it, waited, and watched him step outside. Before he left the porch, he said, You'll regret this. The twins need that money, not Jasper. I shut the door behind him and locked it instantly. Juliet returned to the kitchen table, grabbed her phone, and started screenshotting every message, call record, and threat. She didn't say anything, just worked quietly with a focused expression. Calm, sharp, prepared for whatever came next. The house felt still for a moment. Too still. The ruined cleats sat on the counter between us like evidence. Things weren't calming down. They were escalating. By the next afternoon, day 2 of the tournament, officials reached out and asked us to come in for a formal statement. One official didn't waste time. We've opened an investigation, he said. And yes, someone tampered with your son's equipment. He slid a printed incident summary across the table. We have 3 things that moved this past rumor. The officials explained their findings in order. They mentioned that the sports complex uses fixed cameras along the main walkways and bench zones for liability and dispute purposes. So incidents like this don't go unrecorded. First, a staff volunteer assigned to the bench area reported seeing Philip lingering near the players' bags during warm-ups. handling equipment that wasn't his. Second, their field-adjacent camera caught him in the same spot around the same time. The footage wasn't perfect, but it clearly showed access and timing. Third, they received a written statement from a player who claimed one of the twins bragged about getting rid of competition after Jasper's damaged gear became noticeable. Juliet's voice stayed steady. So what happens now? Pending completion of the investigation, the official said. Evan and Leo are suspended from tournament play. We're also issuing a no-contact directive between families for the remainder of the event. And one more thing, the official added, tapping the incident summary. That sportsmanship report from last weekend? We looked into it because it suddenly mattered. He flipped a page. It wasn't filed by a ref. It wasn't filed by a coach. It came from a parent email. No video attached, no corroboration, and the description doesn't match any of the scrimmage notes. Juliet's voice stayed even. So it's being removed? Yes, he said. It's marked unsubstantiated, and it won't follow your son. I'm sorry it was brought to him at all. It wasn't a victory. It wasn't even satisfying. It was just confirmation that everything we suspected had crossed into reality. Not even an hour later, Becky detonated online. First came a long Facebook post about betrayal, fake injuries, and jealous parents destroying her son's futures. It had over 20 paragraphs of pure chaos. Her followers, mostly other competitive moms, were confused, commenting things like, "What's happening?" and "Who hurt the boys?" Then she filled our phones with massive text blocks, accusing us of conspiracy, manipulation, and ruining a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Evan and Leo. Albert and Catherine spammed my phone with calls, alternating between yelling voicemails and dramatic sighs. "You've broken this family," Catherine said in one message. Albert's next voicemail said, "Fix this. Call the officials." "Undo it!" I didn't respond. Juliet didn't respond either. But the day wasn't done. Late afternoon, when we were finally sitting down and trying to decompress, tires screeched outside our house. A car door slammed hard enough to echo. Juliet peeked through the blinds. "Philip." I got up, but she caught my arm. "Do not open that." Before I could answer, pounding hit the front door, loud and fast. "Nikolai!" Philip yelled. "Come out and face me. You think you're a tough guy? Ruining kids' lives?" He hit the door again, rattling the frame. Juliet pulled Jasper into the hallway and told him to stay there. Philip kept yelling through the door. "You framed us! You're jealous of the boys! You've always been jealous!" Jasper whispered from behind Juliet. "Why is he here?" Juliet shook her head. "Stay back. Don't move." I didn't open the door, and Philip never tried the handle. After a minute of yelling with no answer, he switched tactics. The pounding stopped. Footsteps moved across the porch. Then the sound of paper sliding under the door. A moment later, Philip's car peeled off down the street. I picked up what he left. It was a printed letter, several pages stapled together, accusing me of bullying, targeted harassment, and creating a hostile athletic environment. It ended with a fake threat of forwarding this to my lawyer. Juliet rolled her eyes. He typed this like he was submitting a complaint to HR. Jasper stepped out of the hallway slowly, looking at the letter in my hand. "I don't want them at my games ever again," he said quietly. "You won't ever have to see them there," I told him. No hesitation. The rest of the evening was calm by comparison. Juliet organized all the screenshots, videos, messages, and the letter Philip left. Everything had timestamps. Everything lined up. Just before bedtime, Juliet's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen, then turned it so I could see. Becky had sent a screenshot. Bright white email background, tournament logo at the top. The subject line circled in red, like she was presenting evidence in court. It was a suspension notice from the tournament committee. Under it, she typed, "Look what you did." She wasn't forwarding it to inform us. She was forwarding it to blame us. The notice stated, "Evan and Leo are suspended pending completion of the investigation into misconduct and equipment tampering." Not even 10 seconds later, Becky sent a massive meltdown message. "You did this. You destroyed my boy's future. You are sick. Stay away from us. This is war." Juliet set her phone down calmly. "She's spiraling." And she was. Loud, frantic, and completely detached from the truth. But we weren't done dealing with her yet. 2 days after the suspension notice, there was another knock at the door. Lighter than Philip's. Slower, like whoever stood outside wanted to sound calm, but didn't quite know how. I opened it halfway. Albert stood there with a folded paper in one hand and a forced, polite expression that didn't match anything he'd shown in weeks. "I'm here to negotiate," he said, like this was some business meeting. Juliet stayed in the background, but within earshot. Albert didn't wait to be invited in. He stepped forward just enough to make his point. We can work this out. I'll drop the medical bill issue. He nodded once, proud of himself. All of it. Gone. And what do you want? I asked. He cleared his throat. You need to get the twins reinstated. Call the officials. Tell them you made assumptions. Fix the damage you caused. I stared at him. I didn't cause anything. He continued like he hadn't heard me. Also, Jasper should apologize to Evan and Leo. It would show goodwill. He shrugged. He stirred things up with that whole scout nonsense. Juliet stepped closer. Jasper never said a word about scouts. And your grandsons bragged about getting rid of competition. Albert clucked his tongue. Kids say things. They don't mean anything by it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move closer. I just said, no, I'm not getting the twins reinstated. And Jasper won't apologize for something he didn't do. Albert blinked like he couldn't believe it. Nikolai, this is your chance to fix everything. Everything is fixed, I said. We're done. Albert exhaled sharply, shaking his head. You're throwing away your family. You threw it away, Juliet said from behind me. Albert's face twitched, jaw tightening, but he didn't fire back. Instead, he muttered, You'll regret this. Then he turned and walked away, shoulders tense, like he'd lost a negotiation he thought he should have won easily. That was the last time he came to the house. At Jasper's next practice, Juliet and I set up our chairs like always. The weather was mild, the field calm, and for the first time in a while, there was no tension in the air, until a familiar car slowed near the fence. It was Becky. She didn't get out, didn't even roll the window down. She just drove slowly past the field like she wanted everyone to know she was watching. On the passenger side, Philip held his phone up, recording from inside the car. His face was expressionless, but the camera pointed straight at us. Coach noticed and gave a short nod to me, more acknowledgement than concern. They didn't stop, didn't shout. They just drove by once, circled the lot, then rolled out as quietly as they came. Jasper didn't notice. He was too busy practicing with his new cleats, clean white ones Juliet bought the day after everything went down. He moved easier, ran faster, and didn't check over his shoulder like he had the past few practices. Midway through drills, Coach walked over to where Juliet and I sat. Got a minute? He asked. I stood, expecting something about rule changes or scheduling conflicts, but instead he said, I spoke with the scouts. He crossed his arms in that sturdy, straightforward way he had. They're still interested in Jasper. Juliet smiled. Really? Yeah, Coach said. They asked about him by name. They saw the footage I sent earlier this season, before everything blew up. They want him at an advanced team evaluation next month. I looked over at Jasper sprinting down the field, ball at his feet. He looked lighter, more focused. We'll be there, I said. Coach nodded. He earned it. When he jogged back to the team, Juliet exhaled, shoulders dropping for the first time in days. He deserves something good, she said softly. By the end of the week, after the committee reviewed footage, statements, and staff reports from the weekend, another email came through, this time from the tournament committee. It was a written apology, addressed to both me and Juliet. We extend our apologies for the distress caused by the misconduct targeting your son. Appropriate disciplinary action has been taken. Attached to the email was a notice stating that Evan and Leo were banned from 3 additional events, effective immediately. I didn't smile. I didn't forward it to anyone. I just showed Juliet, and she nodded like it was exactly what needed to happen. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was the family group chat, the one Juliet had left days ago, but I hadn't bothered touching yet. The chat was exploding. Becky, you ruined my boys. Fix this. Albert, this is your fault. Make this right. Catherine, you're tearing the family apart. Philip, we are exploring legal steps now. A dozen more messages appeared in under a minute. Demands, accusations, dramatic declarations about loyalty and betrayal. I watched it scroll for 10 seconds. Then I pressed leave group. No hesitation, no second thoughts. The messages disappeared instantly, replaced with silence. Juliet walked over and set her hand on my shoulder. Good. The next morning, Jasper woke up excited. Can we get to the field early? He asked. His ankle felt better, and he wanted to run drills before the rest of the team arrived. We drove out with the windows cracked. Juliet set up 2 chairs, just ours, side by side on the sideline. The sun was warm but not hot, the field open and quiet. Jasper pulled on his new jersey, the bright color almost glowing in the light, and I folded the old one neatly into his bag. No family cars, no hovering figures, no shouting, no cameras pointed our way, just the 3 of us. Jasper jogged out into the grass, ball at his feet, hair bouncing, smiling for the first time in days. Juliet reached for my hand, and for once, the field felt like exactly what it was supposed to be. Ours, not theirs. No noise, no drama, no family but the one that showed up. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. Stories. Thanks. Stories. Thanks. Stories. Thanks. Stories.